Hello and welcome to Sleepy Story. Tonight we enter a dream that returns to almost everyone, no matter where they live, how old they are, or what language they speak. The scene changes from person to person, but the feeling is unmistakable. It begins with a hush, a road that stretches a little too far, a corridor longer than any building would allow, a forest where the branches lean close as if they are listening. You are there, alone, and you are moving through it as if you belong to the night. Then something shifts. It may be the air, the weight of it. It may be the sound, the way silence makes room for a rhythm. One step, another. Not yours. The dream is telling you that you are no longer alone. Before we go deeper, let me thank you for choosing to spend your night here. Perhaps you are curled safely beneath a blanket, headphones soft against your ears. Perhaps your window is open to a quiet street, or to rain in the distance, or to the low hum of a city that never truly sleeps. Wherever you are, thank you for bringing your attention to this small circle of calm. If these late-night journeys help you breathe a little easier, if they give you wonder to hold while the world quiets down, consider joining this little constellation by subscribing. Your gentle support is the breeze that keeps these stories moving. A whisper before we begin. Sometimes a story opens a door that stays open longer than we expect. If tonight's mystery keeps your eyes awake a little while, treat that wakefulness as another kind of dream. A place where imagination walks beside you and asks questions softly. Now, to the footsteps. In this dream, you do not see the face of what follows. It is the nature of the chase that the pursuer remains just out of view. You sense shape without edges, intention without features. You look over your shoulder, and the world behind you is a collage of possibilities. A shadow tall as a street lamp, a figure more suggestion than presence a blur that slips into the corner of your eye whenever you try to fix it. The mind refuses to give you certainty. It prefers the pressure of not knowing, because not knowing accelerates your heart more surely than any known face. Instinct arrives before thought. Your body chooses motion. You begin to run. And with that choice, the dream rearranges the world into obstacles and corridors. Streets bend where they should not. Sidewalks tilt toward alleys that did not exist a moment ago. Doors that you need refuse to be doors. They are painted illusions. Windows shine without rooms behind them. Trees lace their branches together to slow you. Staircases lead down and then down again into halls that echo with your breath. The landscape itself becomes the accomplice of the pursuer, not because it hates you, but because the dream has decided that you must feel what it is like to be hunted. Why does this happen so often to so many? Why does the mind produce this one story again and again? The first answer is older than cities. For longer than we have been builders, we were listeners and runners. The human body is an archive of alarms. The hairs on your arms rise not because you are modern, but because you are ancient. Somewhere behind your ribs, the memory of the savannah is still awake. You descend from lineages that learned the language of distant paws and breaking twigs. Those who listened carefully lived. Those who ignored the signal did not have children to pass on their quiet. It may be that this dream is the rehearsal of a lesson that shaped your ancestors. Mornings for thousands upon thousands of years. Do not ignore the sound of approach. But the body's archive is only the beginning. There is another layer, the one where symbol lives. The mind knows how to take an unspoken worry from daylight and dress it in night. A deadline becomes a stranger's footsteps. An argument avoided becomes a shape in fog. An apology postponed becomes a hallway that lengthens each time you try to reach the door. The dream does not say the words you have refused to say. Instead, it stages a pursuit so persuasive that you cannot pretend you feel nothing. You wake gasping not only because you were running, but because the dream successfully made you feel the weight of what you are avoiding. There is a third layer as well, the one where the pursuer is not a stranger, not a beast, not even a memory, but a piece of you. If you have tucked away anger so deep, you no longer recognize its voice, it will borrow footsteps to find you. If you carry grief like a sealed jar, the dream will unscrew the lid with the sound of someone following. If there is a truth you will not walk toward in daylight, the night will walk it toward you. In this reading, the chase is not punishment, it is message. It is a summons from the self you are trying not to be, asking to be included, asking to be seen. Listen to the details the dream chooses. In some nights, the ground beneath your shoes is solid, and the fear lives entirely in the presence behind you. In others, the ground is the betrayal. You push forward and discover the pavement softens into water, or stretches upward like a ribbon, or splits like a mouth that wants to swallow your steps. The world cannot be trusted to hold you. This variation often arrives when your waking life feels uncertain underfoot. Work shifting, relationships moving, the map of a familiar day no longer lining up with the territory of your hours. The dream takes the suspicion, that ground is less ground than you believed, and turns it into a lesson your legs can feel. In other nights, the chase is crowded. You are not alone in the running. You pass figures who move as you move, eyes forward, chests heaving, each of them haunted by a sound that belongs to them alone. You realize with a shock that pursuit is not a private ordeal. It is a human ritual. We run together, each from our own unspoken hunter, each with our own reasons for refusing to stop. When you wake from such a dream, the city outside your window feels different. The strangers you pass tomorrow might be carrying the echo of footsteps as well. There are technical explanations people offer for this recurring tale of the night. Spikes in stress hormones, fragments of memory processed in REM, the nervous system testing its emergency channels while the body lies safely in bed. All of that may be true. The dream is built with biology, but biology is not the whole building. The rooms of the mind hold more than hormones. They hold the metaphors a life needs in order to speak with itself. Being chased is one of those metaphors. It condenses dread into a single, undeniable sensation. Move, or be overtaken by what you refuse to face. Think of the small ways the theme appears by day. Emails that linger unopened. Decisions postponed until the calendar itself becomes a pursuer. Promises you meant to keep, but keep placing behind you on the path. Objects you lost and never searched for because searching would admit the loss. Stories you promised to write. Calls you promised to make. Forgiveness you promised to offer. Each of these stands up after dark and tries on the shape of a follower. Each asks the same question in a language the body understands. Will you keep running from me? Sometimes the dream adds compassion to the fear. In the moment before waking, you slow. The footsteps do not. You turn, not out of bravado, but because the exhaustion of fleeing has broken whatever it is inside you that insists on escape. When you turn, the fog thins, and you glimpse a face that hurts to recognize. It is not a monster. It is a memory, perhaps, or a younger self, or a person you loved who deserved more than you had the courage to give. The sound of pursuit was always the sound of your own unfinished conversation. The hunter came because you would not go to them. You wake with the kind of ache that is not panic. It is clarity. What should be done with such a dream? Nothing rash. Do not promise yourself that you will stop running forever after one night of visions. Do not declare victory over fear because you recognized its shoes. Instead, carry the image as if it were a stone warmed by your hand. Remember the way the world bent itself to keep you moving, and ask why your mind believed that this lesson mattered enough to be staged with such care. The dream has a patient intelligence. It repeats until the message reaches daylight. Then it repeats again, because the message is too large for one morning. As we walk forward through this series, we will step into other rooms of this dream. The animals, the mind chooses when it wants teeth to do the talking. The familiar faces it borrows when the conflict lives at your own table. The labyrinths it builds when the real maze is a calendar, or a career, or a conversation you owe someone you love. We will look at how bodies rehearse emergencies in sleep and how culture paints pursuit in myth and film, and how there are nights when the kindest thing you can do is stop, turn, and ask the footsteps what they need. For now, rest at the threshold. Feel your breath in the space between two steps. Listen to the quiet that lives in the pause before you decide to flee again. Ask a question that does not require an answer tonight. If the thing behind you is not meant to harm you, if it has followed you this far because it refuses to give up on being heard, what would happen if, one night soon, you let it catch up and speak? In the theater of sleep, the chase does not begin with running. It begins with arrangement. The mind dims the house lights, draws a curtain over the familiar, and quietly replaces what you know with a set designed to make a single feeling bloom: urgency. A neighborhood becomes a corridor with too many turns. A corridor becomes a road that won't end. A road becomes a ribbon in the sky. None of this is random. The dream is an architect, efficient and precise, building a space where your body will believe that motion is the only answer. The first instrument the dream tunes is sound. The quiet is not silence, it is a frame. Into that frame it places rhythm. Footsteps arrive before a face. This is important. A face can be argued with. A rhythm cannot. Step, step, step. The oldest percussion in the nervous system. Your heart knows this beat. The amygdala, your sentinel, lifts its head in the dark. Somewhere deep, a valve opens. Adrenaline uncoils like a river. Muscles that rest on the mattress begin to hum as if distance were a substance they must burn away. The body is still, but inside the body, the curtain has gone up. Next, the dream chooses distance. The pursuer is near enough to matter, but not near enough to be named. A blur in fog, a silhouette multiplied by street lamps, a suggestion in a glass reflection. The mind withholds detail on purpose because certainty slows fear. Ambiguity sharpens it. You cannot prepare for what you cannot define. So you move. The first step is a negotiation with belief. You know you are in bed, but the air around your dream self tastes like cold, and cold convinces better than logic. Your feet meet the ground you are given. You run. Watch how the set collaborates with your fear. Corners are too frequent. Doors retreat as you approach. Every sanctuary is a rumor. When you press your palm to a wall, the wall gives a little, as if it were made of breath. Hallways contract into throats. Trees lean to listen. Stairs multiply like anxious thoughts. The environment is not neutral. It is responsive, a mirror of the momentum inside you. The more you flee, the more the world learns to delay you. There is choreography to the body's participation. While you dream, your brainstem keeps most muscles from acting out the play. Even so, the story leaks into flesh. A calf twitches. Toes flex against nothing. The jaw sets. Shoulders brace as if they could shrug off darkness. Your heart obeys the script, increasing tempo to match the phantom distance you must cross. Breath arrives in shallow waves. REM sleep is supposed to be a stage for imagination, but it is also rehearsal. The body practices emergencies that may never come again. It remembers how to pour energy into escape, with no time to debate whether escape is wise. Perspective is another instrument. Sometimes you are behind your own eyes, the world narrowing into a tunnel with a single door that always slides one room farther away. Sometimes you are looking down from above, watching a small version of yourself thread through a grid of alleys that never reassemble the same way twice. The first view makes fear immediate. The second makes it mythic. You become your own archetype, one more runner in a story the species has told for longer than memory. The dream knows when to shift the camera to keep your belief alive. Notice the constancy of the sound behind you. It does not falter because it is not a person. It is persistence made audible. The pursuer never trips because what follows is not feet, but unfinishedness. A conversation you avoided, a decision with teeth, a truth you stored in a box and labeled later. The footsteps take their tempo from avoidance. They keep time as long as you do. The paradox of the chase is this: the more you flee, the more the pursuer exists. Without your running, it is only air. Sometimes the dream adds weather to thicken the scene. Fog lowers thought into instinct. Rain writes diagonal lines across vision, like a sketch of panic. Wind pushes against your chest to turn forward motion into labor. Cold bites the lung to make each breath an arithmetic problem you can barely solve. Texture is persuasion. The body records texture more faithfully than ideas. The dream knows this and paints with temperature, pressure, and weight until every cell agrees to believe. There is an ethics to the way the dream withholds rescue. Phones do not have signal. Friends' houses are present but far. Rooms with lights are locked or turn out to be windows drawn onto walls. You bang, and the paint flakes like old snow. Part of you resents the dream for this cruelty. Another part recognizes the lesson hidden in the stubbornness. Resolution does not arrive from outside. The scene refuses to save you, so you might remember that the only lever you truly control in a chase is the choice to stop or turn. But the dream will not grant that choice easily. It prefers inertia. Speed is anesthesia. As long as you are sprinting, you do not have to consider what is behind you. The dream would rather you continue the experiment of panic to its natural limit. That limit comes when the body inside the story begins to tire. Ankles ache, thighs heave. The air refuses to be enough. At this edge, something interesting happens. The world often slows. The road grows viscous, as if the night were honey. The footsteps, impossibly, do not slow with you. They are not bound by your exhaustion. This asymmetry is where the dream makes its argument. Flight cannot outlast what it refuses to face. There are versions where you hide. You slide under a table in an abandoned cafe where the cups are all the same white, the plates all the same white, the napkins folded as if customers might return any moment. You hold your breath. The footsteps pause on the other side of the door. You learn that silence has its own vocabulary. You count to numbers you would never bother with awake. You make yourself something small, and then a chair creaks without being touched, as if the air itself sat down to wait you out. Hiding buys time, but the dream knows the lease expires. You will run again. There are versions where the scene opens onto scale, a bridge in darkness, cables singing like strings, the river below not water, but a sky turned inside out. You run because to stop would be to understand how far the fall might be. Far is not a number. It is a feeling the body cannot store without shaking. The dream uses vastness to unnerve you into motion, because motion is the only coin it can spend to keep the story alive. And then there are versions that flirt with mercy. You slow, you turn. The shape that has been borrowing your fear to keep itself intact becomes a figure you know. A younger you with knees scabbed from a fall you forgot. A friend you did not call back. A stranger who looks like someone from a street you no longer visit. In that second, the sound behind you changes from threat to request. You do not wake with terror in these versions. You wake with ache. The dream has performed a translation. What chased you was a message, and messages do not stop at dead ends. They take detours through sleep when daylight locks the door. All of this, the sound, the set, the weather, the angles, the ethics of withheld rescue, the physics of viscous roads, the arithmetic of breath, is anatomy. Not a diagram on a page, but a living arrangement of elements meant to sculpt one experience until it cannot be denied. The dream does not ask whether you learned anything from calm reflection. It demands that you feel what avoidance feels like when given feet. If the architecture is so deliberate, what does it want? Some nights, it wants you to practice. Your body learns again how to mobilize, how to cut through hesitation with motion, how to choose a direction under pressure. Other nights, it wants you to see the pattern, how every alley leads to another alley because escape has become the goal instead of clarity. Occasionally, it wants you to fail at fleeing, because failing at fleeing is the only way you will test another verb. When you wake from a chase, the echo lingers. You carry it into the morning like a metronome only you can hear. It ticks behind conversations, behind emails, behind the simple act of pouring tea. The day asks ordinary questions. The metronome asks one. What is behind you now? You do not have to answer at once. You only have to admit the question belongs to you. If you listen closely, You may notice the dream's discipline outside of sleep. A deadline becomes a hallway that grows each time you postpone. A phone call becomes rain that hardens the air. An apology becomes a stairwell without a landing. These conversions are how the unconscious speaks when it is not permitted to write in words. Understanding the anatomy of the chase is learning to read your day as the set on which the night will later improvise. There is one more detail in the construction worth noticing. The way the dream times your awakening. It rarely wakes you at the beginning. It waits for the apex, for the moment when you understand that speed will not save you. That is when the body pulls the emergency lever and returns you to the room. The lesson arrives with you. Momentum is not resolution. If you treat the day the way the dream treated the night, you may always be in motion and never be free. So hold this structure gently. The dream is not your enemy. It is a teacher with difficult methods. It prefers example to explanation, sensation to lecture. It knows that the only way to make some truths real is to put them in your feet. Tonight, if the rhythm returns, step, 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 and the world begins to bend, ask a question not about escape, but about meaning. What would change if, instead of feeding the rhythm with distance, you fed it with attention? Perhaps that is the quiet threshold the anatomy points toward without forcing you across it. Not the end of fear, but the end of automatic fleeing. Not victory, but vision. And maybe, if you listen to that small difference, the footsteps will sound less like a hunter and more like a messenger who has finally caught up to speak. To understand the dream of being chased, we must travel not just through the halls of psychology, but through the long corridor of time itself. There is something older than culture, older than language, older even than the stories etched on stone walls that breathes inside these dreams. It is instinct, the echo of ancient survival, a voice so old it speaks without words. Picture, if you will, our earliest ancestors. Long before the safety of doors and locks, before the warmth of electricity, before the idea of nations or even names. They lived under open skies, slept in caves, gathered near fires whose smoke curled into the dark. Their world was not empty. It was filled with eyes that glowed from the forest edge, paws that padded silently across the earth, wings that cut the night in silence. To live then was to be watched, to be measured, to be at risk. Humanity was small. The world around was vast and sharp. In those days, survival meant listening. A snapped twig could decide whether a child grew into adulthood. The scent of fur in the air might mean the difference between a night of peace and a night of blood. The body learned to notice. The body became a library of alarms, and those alarms did not vanish with the predators. They stayed, stitched into muscle, encoded in the nervous system, passed down through generations like a whisper that never fades. This is why, when you dream of being chased, your heart does not ask for explanation. It reacts. It floods your veins with urgency, as though a lion still waits outside the cave, as though the forest still breathes with hunters larger than you. Rationally, you know you are safe in your bed. But instinct is older than rationality. It does not care for walls or windows. It remembers the nights when running was the only thread between existence and extinction. Anthropologists call this a primal template. It is the script the body keeps even after the play has changed. Predators may not circle your modern neighborhood. Wolves may not stalk your path to school. But the template remains. When stress rises, when fear gathers, when uncertainty takes shape, the unconscious reaches for the oldest script it knows. It summons the chase, because the chase is the purest rehearsal for survival. Run, endure, evade, outlast. Consider how universal the details are. The faceless pursuer, the endless corridors, the heavy legs, the desperate lungs. These are not inventions of modern anxiety. They are echoes of nights long gone. Nights when your ancestors crouched in the dark and prayed the dawn would find them alive. The dream is not an error. It is a rehearsal passed down like a song, each heartbeat carrying the rhythm of footsteps you may never escape. Sometimes, when you run in dreams, the environment itself recalls ancient landscapes, forests dense and watchful, plains where there is no cover, only horizon, cliffs where the only choice is up or down. These are not chosen at random. They are the stages where survival was once tested, the ancient classrooms where fear was the teacher and endurance the only lesson. Your mind, in the privacy of sleep, still remembers them. The chase dream is not just about fear of predators. It is about remembering that we were once prey. To run is to acknowledge that part of human history, the part where small bands of fragile creatures survived, not because they were strongest, but because they were quick, clever, and cautious. To dream of being chased is to slip back into that role, to remember what it was to live as a fragile spark in a world of storms. This is why children have these dreams so often. A child is closer to helplessness, closer to vulnerability. They carry in their small frames the memory of a species that once depended on speed more than strength. And as they grow, as they gather words and tools, the dreams may fade, but they do not vanish. They wait. They return in times of stress, in seasons of fear, when the adult body forgets it is not invincible. What is remarkable is how little the body needs to summon the chase. A hint of unease, a trace of danger, and the ancient program begins. Breath shortens. Legs grow heavy. Heart beats in the rhythm of pursuit. The dream does not require a face for the pursuer, because the face was never the point. The point was the feeling. The certainty that something wants to overtake you, and that you must not allow it. Even today, when true predators rarely step into our lives, the instinct finds new costumes. A deadline becomes the panther in the grass. A debt collector wears the shadow of the wolf. A secret you carry beats its wings like an owl that hunts in silence. The body does not distinguish between the fear of tooth and claw and the fear of failure or loss. To the nervous system, they are all pursuit. They are all reasons to run. But if the dream is instinct's echo, what lesson does it try to teach now? Perhaps it is that survival is not finished, that even in our modern world of lights and locks, we are still fragile creatures who carry ancient fear in our bones. Or perhaps it is that fear itself is not the enemy. Fear kept your ancestors alive. Fear made them listen, made them move, made them endure. Fear is not only what chases you, it is also what guides you. So the next time you wake with your chest heaving and your sheets tangled, consider this. You are not weak for dreaming of pursuit. You are remembering. You are participating in a rehearsal as old as humanity itself. You are listening to the whisper of ancestors who ran through forests darker than any nightmare, who kept moving so that you might one day dream at all. And maybe the deeper question is this: if these instincts have followed us across millennia, are they still shaping us in ways we cannot see? When you run in your dream, are you running only from fear? Or are you also running toward the part of yourself that survived because it learned to flee? If our bodies remember the chase as an ancient drill for survival, our minds remember it as a riddle. Two voices from the last century still echo through any quiet room where dreams are discussed. They are not the only voices, but they are the loudest, and their shadows still lengthen across every interpretation that follows. One voice belongs to Sigmund Freud, who believed dreams are the disguised expression of what conscience refuses. The other belongs to Carl Jung, who believed dreams are the language of symbols shared by all humanity. Between them, the dream of being chased becomes more than panic. It becomes a message with two dialects: repression and recognition. Freud begins with a theater. In his vision, your sleeping mind draws curtains over the waking stage, then slips censored desires into costume. Forbidden impulses are not allowed to speak their names, so they dress as characters who can cross the border patrol of awareness without arrest. In this theater, the pursuer is a messenger disguised as a threat. It is a wish that has been exiled, an energy quarantined by morals or manners. A hunger for power denied in daylight appears at night as a figure that rushes toward you. A current of anger sealed behind the teeth takes the shape of a stranger who will not slow down. A tenderness you do not trust arrives as a presence that insists on being near. You run because the mask is frightening, and because to stop would be to admit that the mask belongs to something inside you. Freud calls this camouflage dream work. It bends, condenses, and substitutes. If the truth is too close to speak, the dream moves it one step sideways and lets you feel instead of confess. In that sense, the footsteps behind you are the percussive beat of a truth knocking. The more vigorously you repress, the more urgently the dream stages pursuit. Running becomes a ritual of avoidance. You wake with a heart pounding not only from exertion, but from the knowledge that your own mind constructed a hunter out of what you did not allow yourself to want. Jung enters another door. He does not deny that desire hides. He simply insists that desire is not the whole story. Behind personal history, he sees a deeper field, a commons of images and patterns that human beings seem to carry, no matter where they are born. In that field live the archetypes: the mother, the hero, the trickster, the wise old one, the child, the shadow. For Jung, the faceless pursuer is the shadow made audible. The shadow is not only wickedness or vice, it is the sum of everything you refuse to include when you say I. It holds qualities you have disowned: aggression, yes, but also strength; envy, but also ambition; grief, but also depth; sensuality, but also the power to feel fully. The shadow is the unlived life walking behind you. Listen to the way the pursuer behaves in these dreams: implacable, patient, close enough to be felt, far enough to remain unnamed. That is the shadow's signature. It does not throw speeches across the night. It applies pressure. It does not negotiate from a chair. It walks. It follows because wholeness requires inclusion, and inclusion requires awareness, and awareness has been postponed. When the dream places you in flight, Jung would say it is not punishing you for fear. It is showing you fear as a map. The map says, everything you reject becomes a path you must travel later in order to return to yourself. Both visions meet at a quiet crossroads. Freud's disguised messenger and Jung's shadow are different costumes for the same insistence. That what? We bury refuses to stay buried. The difference is tone. Freud asks, what do you want that you will not admit? Jung asks, what part of you have you exiled that must come home? The first centers impulse. The second centers wholeness. Together they invite a new reading of the chase. You are not hunted by an alien enemy. You are pursued by unfinishedness. Think about the specific costumes your pursuer chooses. Some nights it borrows a stranger's height and stride. Other nights it borrows a familiar face, someone you love, someone you resent, someone whose approval still holds your spine too straight. Sometimes it needs no face at all and arrives as a column of dark air with a center you cannot look at directly. Freud might say, follow the trail of feeling. Where in your life does this intensity live with no name? Jung might say, follow the trail of exclusion. Which quality in that figure have you refused to claim as your own? If the pursuer is powerful, where have you thrown away your power? If the pursuer is cruel, where have you tucked cruelty inside? Sweetness and called it virtue? If the pursuer is swift, where have you slowed yourself into safety and then called it the only way to live? Notice how the setting collaborates with the psychology. A hallway lined with office doors that never open is a dream's critique of your work life. But it is also a stage for the shadow to walk down until you look. A forest of grasping branches is a memory of old fear, but it is also a gallery where your denial can hang pictures of fangs until you admit you are terrified. In one reading, the pursuer is a wish that cannot speak plainly. In the other, it is the banished king asking for his crown. The dream does not ask you to choose a single theory. It asks you to feel which one warms the key in your palm. There is tenderness at the edges of both frameworks. Freud, for all his severity, believed that bringing a hidden impulse into speech could relieve suffering. Jung, for all his fondness for mythic language, believed that integrating the shadow enlarges the soul instead of darkening it. Both imply the same courage, to slow down inside the chase. When you are sprinting, language collapses to a few commands: flee, turn, hide, breathe. Courage in the dream is not heroics. It is attention applied to the thing behind you. What does it want from you besides movement? What would happen if you lent it your eyes? Consider the variation where you turn. Not dramatically, not with a battle posture, but the way a person turns toward a child who has tugged at their sleeve for too long. The instant you rotate, you feel a pressure release. Sometimes the figure remains a blur. Sometimes it clarifies into a version of yourself you ignored, an age you forgot to grieve, a talent you left outside because it did not match the uniform you were given. The pursuit quiets not because you destroyed the pursuer, but because you recognized the relation. The footsteps belong to you both. You were not prey, you were a divided pilgrim. The path behind you is not a corridor of enemies, but a procession of neglected rooms. Freud would call this a lessening of repression. Jung would call it a moment in individuation, the long process by which a person gradually becomes a whole singular being rather than a collage of masks. Either way, the nervous system receives the same gift. The rhythm behind you slows. Panic dissolves into ache. Ache dissolves into clarity. You wake not with a shout, but with the sense that a private treaty has been signed in the night. Of course, the treaty does not end the work. In daylight, the shadow still requests inclusion. A boundary spoken where you used to swallow words. A project attempted where you used to condemn ambition in others. An apology made where you used to sprint, pass guilt and call it efficiency. Likewise, the exiled impulse still asks for a healthier channel. Anger moved through the body without scorched earth. Desire spoken without costume. Grief allowed to reign without hiding behind thunder. The dream's drama becomes a small daily practice. You stop running across town in your own life. You start turning toward the footsteps sooner. There are pitfalls in both systems, and it helps to name them so the chase does not resume in more clever clothing. Freud's lens can reduce every symbol to one organ and every longing to one hunger, flattening the vast sky of human meaning into a single compass point. Jung's lens can enchant a person into myth without responsibility, turning every conflict into a story about gods and forgetting the human being who also needs sleep, water, and honest conversation. If you hold both lenses together, you gain depth. You treat the pursuer as both charged with personal history and dressed in universal cloth. You let it be about your childhood and about all childhoods. You let it be a particular habit and an archetype that belongs to the species. There is also a golden piece of the shadow that many forget. The traits you admire in others and deny in yourself belong to that dark treasury too. People often think the shadow is only the cellar of vices. It is also the attic of strengths you are afraid to own. If the figure behind you moves with elegance, where did you abandon grace? If it seems courageous, where did you decide courage was for other people? If it glows faintly, where did you decide light belongs to someone else's face? Sometimes you run not from what you fear, but from what you are capable of becoming. In this way, the dream of being chased is an invitation to adopt a different verb than escape. You can approach, you can inquire, you can listen. Even inside sleep, attention changes physics. Corridors stop lengthening when you are willing to stay. Doors appear when you stop demanding rescue and begin asking what this room is here to teach. The rhythm of footsteps becomes a metronome for a conversation rather than a drum for a hunt. When you wake from such a night, the world outside the window feels more spacious. You begin to suspect that the city is not only a maze, it is a library. Tonight, if the stage manager of sleep lowers you once more onto a street that looks familiar until it doesn't. If lamps lean like tall witnesses and fog remembers your name, carry both interpreters with you. Ask Freud's question without shame. What? Am I refusing that now arrives in costume? Ask Jung's question without fear. What part of me have I disowned that wants to walk beside me again? Hold both questions like twin lanterns. The same path will look different under their light, and if the footsteps come, steady as breath, allow one more thought to bloom between them. What if the thing behind me is not chasing me down, but calling me back? There is a peculiar cruelty in the dream of being chased. It is not only that you are hunted, it is that you rarely know by whom. The figure at your back is blurred, undefined, a sketch smudged by the hand of sleep. You hear it. You sense it's a weight. You know it has eyes, though you cannot see them. You know it has intent, though no mouth has spoken. This vagueness is not accident. It is design. To be chased by a lion would at least grant you the dignity of certainty. A lion has teeth, has muscle, has purpose. You would know what you must do. To be chased by a soldier would provide context, an enemy, a cause, a battle unfinished. But to be chased by a shadow with no face is to be haunted by ambiguity itself. Ambiguity is the mind's most efficient fuel for fear. What you cannot name, you cannot answer. Psychologists note that facelessness in dreams often arises because the brain does not bother to generate detail it does not need. But there is another layer. Fear is sharper when undefined. A blurred pursuer can hold all possibilities at once. It could be human or not, friend or stranger, beast or memory. Your unconscious prefers not to resolve the image because the uncertainty keeps you running. Think about the moments when you almost glimpse the face. A street lamp flickers and nearly reveals features, but the light dies before it settles. A hand brushes your shoulder, but when you turn, the air is empty. The silhouette gains edges for a heartbeat, then dissolves. These hesitations are deliberate. The dream withholds clarity because clarity would limit fear. To see a face is to place the threat in a category. To not see a face is to grant it endless possibility. Cultures have long understood this. Myths of shadowy hunters, demons without, features, spirits that borrow shapes but never settle into them, all echo the same archetype. In Japanese folklore, there are faceless beings called Nopperabo, who approach with the outline of a person but no eyes, no nose, no mouth. In European ghost stories, faceless horsemen ride through the night as omens of death. In modern tales, the slender man moves through forests without features, terrifying not because of what he is, but because of what he refuses to be. These stories remind us, the faceless figure is a mirror. It reflects whatever fear we bring to it. When you run from such a shadow in your dream, your body interprets it as ultimate danger. The faceless pursuer is not a predator with fangs. It is a vessel. Into it flows every unfinished dread, every avoided truth, every memory you have not unwrapped. It is fear personalized, yet without personality. There is also a strange intimacy in facelessness. Because the pursuer has no features, your mind sometimes fills in fragments. A gesture that reminds you of someone. A stride that echoes your own. A presence that feels disturbingly familiar. In those moments, the shadow hints that it may not be a stranger at all. It may be built from you. And then the question sharpens. Are you running from someone else? Or from the parts of yourself you are unwilling to see clearly? Consider too the dream's ethics. A faceless pursuer spares you the violence of recognition. If the hunter bore the face of someone you love, the nightmare would wound too deeply. If it bore the face of someone you hate, the dream would resolve too easily. To keep the figure vague is to keep the story open. The dream wants you to feel pursuit, not to resolve it. It wants to show you the structure of fear itself. Formless, patient, impossible to answer because it does not identify itself. And what happens when you stop running, when you turn to look? Some dreamers say the face never appears. They stare into blur, into a shifting mist, into something that dissolves the closer you approach. Some say they glimpse their own outline, distorted, as though chasing themselves through water. Others say they see nothing at all. The footsteps vanish the moment they are confronted, as if the act of turning unravels the figure entirely. Perhaps that is the secret of the faceless pursuer. It does not exist until you flee. It is born of avoidance. It thrives on distance. The moment you turn, the story loses fuel. Ambiguity cannot survive attention. Like mist in sunlight, it dissolves. So the faceless hunter remains the most efficient design the dreaming mind has ever built. It terrifies, not because of what it is, but because of what it refuses to be. It is unfinishedness given legs. It is absence made into a presence. It is the whisper that says, "What you will not face will face you." Tonight, if you hear footsteps in your sleep, if you feel the air tighten around your shoulders, ask yourself, is the thing behind you faceless because it is stranger, or because it is waiting for you to paint the face yourself? Most chase dreams leave you fleeing from faceless shadows, entities undefined and unsettling, precisely because they remain unfinished. But sometimes, the dream grows sharper. The mist parts, the blur condenses, and when you glance back, the face behind you is one you know. It might be the face of someone you love, or someone you fear, or someone you thought you had left behind. On the most disquieting nights, it is your own face, distorted by angles of memory you cannot escape. Why would the mind design such a cruel script? Why take someone close, someone important, and place them in the role of pursuer? To understand this, we must enter the deep chamber where relationships, emotions, and memory converge. The chase is never random. It is a dialogue staged by the unconscious. When the face is familiar, the dialogue cuts deeper. Imagine you are running down an endless hallway. The walls breathe like lungs, the air thick with the weight of your own pulse. You glance back, and the pursuer is not a stranger. It is your partner, the one whose hand you have held, whose laughter you know as well as your own. But in the dream, their eyes are sharpened, their stride relentless. You do not stop. You run from them, though the thought alone tears at you. Why? Because the unconscious knows that love is rarely simple. Affection can braid itself with anger, resentment, disappointment, fear. The dream insists on honesty when waking life refuses it. You may not admit your frustration aloud. You may not confess your doubts. But at night, the buried truth borrows the face of the beloved and chases you until you cannot ignore it. The same happens with family. When the dream gives the hunter the face of a parent, it may not be malice the mind is staging. It may be the weight of expectation. Parents, for better or worse, are the first authorities we know. Their footsteps were the earliest sounds of safety or the earliest sounds of discipline. Even in adulthood, that echo does not fade. To be chased by a parent is to be chased by the unending pressure to measure up, the invisible contract of approval and disappointment that never quite dissolves. You may run from their gaze in daily life, but at night, the gaze grows legs. It follows. And then there are enemies. To be pursued by someone who wronged you is almost logical. Their betrayal left a mark, and the mark still stings. The dream recreates them, sometimes with a face unaltered, sometimes distorted by the smoke of time. You run not because they are dangerous now, but because their shadow still lives in you. You have not forgiven, or you have not resolved, or perhaps you have not even admitted how deeply they cut. So the unconscious gives them a body, again, and makes you feel the old wound through the rhythm of pursuit. The most haunting version is when the pursuer is you. You are running, and in the final turn you see your own outline gaining. Sometimes it is your present self, eyes fierce with something you do not want to name. Sometimes it is a younger version, childlike and fragile, chasing with desperate steps. You cannot outrun. Sometimes it is older, a version of you weathered and silent, a figure that terrifies not because it is monstrous, but because it is inevitable. And sometimes it is grotesque, your reflection twisted into exaggerations of what you despise. To be chased by yourself is to recognize that the enemy you fear most may not be outside at all. It is within, demanding you turn and acknowledge it. Consider what this means. If you are hunted by yourself, you can never truly escape. The footsteps are synchronized to your heartbeat. Every turn is already anticipated. The corridors bend because you bend them. The fear is not of capture, but of confrontation. What happens when you can no longer deny the parts of you that run behind? History and myth echo this theme. In ancient Greek tragedies, heroes are often pursued not by strangers, but by their own choices given flesh. Orestes, haunted by the Furies for avenging his father. Pentheus, undone by the very desires he condemned. In folklore across cultures, doubles appear, the doppelganger, the shadow self, the twin that follows silently. Always, the lesson is the same. The greatest pursuit comes not from the unknown, but from the unacknowledged. The emotional residue of such dreams is heavy. To wake after fleeing from a lover leaves you disoriented, staring at them across the breakfast table with unease you cannot explain. To wake after fleeing from a parent stirs feelings of guilt, as though you betrayed them even in your sleep. To wake after fleeing from yourself is the most profound ache of all, a reminder that your own reflection carries a weight you refuse to bear. And yet, there is opportunity hidden in these cruel performances. The dream may not be a punishment. It may be an invitation. To be chased by the familiar is to be asked to consider what you avoid. Perhaps you need honesty in love. Perhaps you need to release yourself from old expectations. Perhaps you need to forgive an enemy, or at least forgive yourself for the wound they left. Perhaps you need to turn toward the self you abandoned and walk beside it instead of fleeing. There is tenderness in this interpretation. The pursuer is not a monster. It is a mirror. It insists on recognition. It will not vanish until you turn and say, "I see you. I accept you. You are part of me." So the next time you hear familiar footsteps in your dream, ask yourself, are they chasing you to harm you, or are they chasing you to come home? Dreams often speak in fragments, in blurred faces, in hallways that stretch too long or forests that whisper with no wind. But in the dream of pursuit, the language becomes sharper, steadier, unmistakable. It is the sound of footsteps, before the shadow sharpens, before the figure materializes, before fear blooms in your throat. The dream begins with rhythm. Step, step, step. An unbroken cadence that seems to fall not only on the ground behind you but inside your chest, as though the footsteps were carved from your heartbeat itself. Listen closely, even in memory. Footsteps in dreams rarely sound chaotic. They are ordered, insistent, and patient. They do not stumble. They do not falter. They strike the surface of the dream world with eerie consistency, a percussion that carries inevitability. Sometimes they are near, so close you can almost feel breath on your neck. Sometimes they echo far behind, as if to remind you that distance is only an illusion. Sometimes they grow louder, even when you sprint, bending the laws of space to prove that fear is faster than legs. Why footsteps? Why not roars, or claws, or the rush of wings? Because footsteps are human. They are intimate. They imply a pursuer with intent, a presence tethered to you, refusing to vanish. A roar belongs to an animal. A scream belongs to a stranger. But footsteps belong to someone who insists on following. They are not the sound of attack, but the sound of approach. And approach is the true essence of dread. There is science here. Human beings evolved to be exquisitely sensitive to sound behind them. For our ancestors, the rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the shift of grass could mean survival or death. Predators often came from behind. To hear pursuit was to live, on the edge of consequence. Even now, walking home at night, how quickly your nerves catch fire when you imagine footsteps following on the sidewalk. The dream borrows this ancient reflex and magnifies it until your body cannot distinguish sleep from danger. Your pulse leaps, your muscles coil, your lungs race, all because of a sound that may not even exist outside the theater of your mind. The dream is also an engineer. It knows where to place its sound. In an endless hallway, the footsteps echo, multiplying into a chorus, each strike reverberating until it feels like a crowd hunts you. In a forest, the steps soften, muffled by moss, yet never disappear. An insistent whispering tread that convinces you the predator is clever, patient, closer than it seems. In a city street, the sound bounces from walls and pavement, a slap-slap, rhythm that pins you in place no matter how many turns you take. Even the surface matters. Stone makes the chase feel ancient, wood makes it intimate, metal makes it industrial and inescapable. Every texture of dreamscape becomes an instrument for footsteps to play. There is also psychology in the rhythm, steady. Even steps tell you that the pursuer is confident. They will catch you eventually. They do not need to rush. This steadiness is more terrifying than frenzy. A frantic pursuer might trip. A calm one never doubts. Some dreams, however, shift the rhythm. The steps quicken suddenly, closing the distance in a sprint that rattles your lungs. Or worse, they pause. Silence fills the dream like a held breath, convincing you that you are alone, until the sound resumes, closer than before. Such unpredictability breaks your trust in the environment. You realize you are not in control of the tempo. The music belongs to the one behind. Across cultures, footsteps are tied to the supernatural. In Celtic tales, phantom steps at night warned of spirits nearby. In Japanese legends, yokai were said to follow with soft steps, revealing themselves only when the listener could bear the suspense no longer. In medieval Europe, peasants told of the wild hunt, a host of spirits whose hoofbeats and footsteps thundered across the skies, chasing souls into the underworld. In all these stories, sound alone was enough to announce presence. To hear steps, when no one is visible, is to feel the invisible claim reality. Your dream repeats this archetype. Footsteps are persistence made audible. They remind you that something unacknowledged continues to follow. Maybe it is an avoided decision. Maybe it is grief you locked in a quiet room. Maybe it is anger that refused burial. In the day, you distract yourself. At night, the distraction falls away and the sound grows louder. The footsteps are not about what is behind you. They are about what is unfinished within you. There are subtle variations in how footsteps haunt. Heavy, dragging steps often imply inevitability, an approaching force you cannot stop, a fate you cannot change. Quick, light steps carry urgency, pressures of deadlines, responsibilities, anxieties nipping at your heels. Irregular steps, starting and stopping, suggest unpredictability, relationships or memories that vanish and return without warning. Each rhythm is a language of the unconscious. The body translates without needing words. Danger, pressure, inevitability, uncertainty. Some dreamers confess that footsteps bring not only fear, but paradoxical comfort. The knowledge that someone follows means they are not alone. Silence, after all, can be lonelier than pursuit. The dread of abandonment sometimes outweighs the dread of capture. For these dreamers, the footsteps pulse with dual meaning: threat and companionship, menace and connection. They wake unsettled, unsure whether they were hunted or simply accompanied. Cinema knows this trick well. Villains are often introduced by sound before sight, the measured tread of boots on marble, the echo of steps down a corridor. Heroes too can be revealed by stride, footsteps marking presence before a word is spoken. The human mind treats steps as narrative. Each one is a beat in the story of approach. The dream uses the same technique. It paces your fear with rhythm, ensuring that every second carries tension. And sometimes, the footsteps are your own. Some dreams twist perspective until the runner realizes the echo matches their pace. They are being chased not by another, but by themselves, their own rhythm, doubled back. This revelation is the purest metaphor of avoidance. The more you run, the louder you hear the echo. The pursuer never existed apart from your own movement. You cannot outrun yourself because the sound begins in your own chest. So what, then, is the weight of footsteps? It is the burden of what follows. Every step behind you is a reminder that fear is not passive. It moves. It insists. It does not wait politely in silence. It keeps pace with you through forests of memory, through hallways of obligation, through streets of longing. Whether the pursuer is stranger, shadow, or self, the sound is the same: steady, unavoidable, patient. Perhaps the deeper truth is this: footsteps are not only a sign of pursuit, they are also a call. Each step says, listen. Something in you wants to be noticed. Something wants to catch up, not to harm you, but to speak. The fear comes from refusal to turn. Tonight, if you hear footsteps in your dream, pause inside the fear. Ask, what rhythm do they carry? Are they heavy with inevitability? Are they quick with urgency? Are they irregular with uncertainty? Or are they your own, reminding you that the self you flee has been beside you all along? The footsteps will continue until you stop. The question is not whether you will be caught. The question is whether you will finally turn and ask the sound, what do you want me to hear? When dreamers describe their chase, they often speak of corridors, hallways that stretch without mercy, narrowing or widening in impossible proportions. Doors appear, but when reached, they melt into walls or open only onto more corridors. Stairs rise into endless spirals, descending again into the same place. Space itself conspires to trap you, a maze without exit, a geometry designed to remind you that escape is an illusion. Why corridors? Why does the unconscious choose this architecture of repetition? A field might allow flight, a mountain might offer hiding, but corridors force forward motion. You cannot turn aside, you cannot leave, you can only run. The corridor is pursuit, made architecture. The first corridors we ever knew were biological: arteries, veins, airways, birth canals. Passageways are the essence of human life. To enter the world is to move through a corridor. To breathe is to move air through one. Our very bodies are labyrinths of passage. Is it any wonder that the dreaming mind borrows this form? The corridor is not only a hallway in a building, it is the shape of existence itself. In psychology, corridors symbolize transitions between states, between decisions, between versions of the self. To run endlessly through them is to feel trapped in transition, never arriving at the next room. Perhaps you are waiting to choose but cannot. Perhaps you are suspended between past and future. The dream captures this paralysis in architecture, door after door, none of them delivering you from pursuit. Notice the details when you recall such dreams. The lights flicker, buzzing overhead like wasps. The air grows thick, as though you are inhaling dust from centuries of silence. The floor may be polished tile, or creaking wood, or damp stone. Each texture tells its own story. Tile feels sterile, institutional, as though your pursuer is connected to authority. Wood feels intimate, domestic, as though the hunter walks your family home. Stone feels ancient, ritualistic, as though the chase is not just yours, but humanity's. Every surface becomes part of the narrative. Corridors multiply in unsettling ways. You turn a corner, expecting change, but the hall repeats itself exactly. Same doors, same cracks in the plaster, same hum of lights. This repetition is not laziness of imagination. It is design. Repetition in dreams is a form of emphasis. Thy unconscious is saying, there is no new place until you face the old place. Escape is not possible until you turn. Myth and literature echo this motif. Think of labyrinths, the Cretan maze built for the Minotaur, where heroes wandered endlessly until they faced the beast. Think of haunted houses, where victims flee down hallways that fold back into themselves. Think of Borges's libraries, where corridors stretch forever, containing all books but never resolution. Humanity has long used endless passageways to represent the mind itself, expansive, recursive, inescapable, until one dares to confront what waits inside. From a neuroscientific view, such corridors may mirror how the hippocampus encodes spatial memory. When stressed, the brain loops scenarios, replaying them in variations. An endless corridor is the visual form of mental looping. You cannot leave the thought, so you cannot leave the hall. Anxiety is architecture. Repetition is floor plan. The dream is not cruel for cruelty's sake. It is showing you the shape of your own entrapment. But there is another layer. Corridors are thresholds. Every door is a potential crossing. Even when locked, even when false, the very act of reaching for them symbolizes desire for transition. Perhaps you are chasing change in life, but never quite reaching it. Perhaps the dream insists you confront the fear of crossing thresholds, fear of leaving what is known, even if what is known is exhausting. The pursuer ensures you keep moving, but the doors ensure you keep hoping. It is the cruelest hope. Salvation always one door away, never granted. Imagine the sensory immersion. Your shoes strike the floor. Slap, slap, slap. Behind you, the footsteps echo. Slower, steadier. You pass doors numbered but not sequential. 11, 37, 4, 19. You reach for the handle, it turns, and inside is another hallway, identical, waiting. The air smells of damp plaster and forgotten electricity. Somewhere above, pipes rattle with unseen pressure. The walls close in, breathing with you. Every turn is a repetition of fear. You are not running through a building. You are running through your own inability to exit. The dream may even fracture geometry. Corridors bend back on themselves. You sprint, turn a corner, and see yourself ahead, still running. Time loops with space. You chase and are chased simultaneously. The hallway is no longer architecture but paradox. You are both hunter and hunted, both ahead and behind, trapped in the Ouroboros of pursuit. What lesson hides in such cruelty? Perhaps that the exit is not outward but inward. Endless corridors remind you that escape is not about doors, it is about recognition. If you keep running, you will repeat. If you turn, perhaps the walls will dissolve. The Minotaur is not at the end. The Minotaur is you. Only by facing it does the maze release. The weight of these dreams lingers long. After waking, you rise unsettled. Hallways in your house suddenly sharper, doorways too narrow, staircases too steep. The echo of endlessness follows into your day. It colors your office corridors, your school hallways, your commutes through tunnels and stations. You begin to notice how much of waking life is spent in corridors too. Transitions, routines, passages, where you move but never arrive. The dream is only a magnification of what daily life already contains. And perhaps this is the most unsettling truth. Life itself is a corridor. Birth at one end, death at the other. We run through it, opening doors of choices, hoping each leads somewhere different. But often, the same patterns repeat. Same arguments, same mistakes, same griefs dressed in new clothing. The dream of the endless corridor is not a nightmare alone. It is a portrait of existence. We are all pursued by time, running through passage after passage, hoping for an exit we never quite reach. So tonight, if you find yourself in a hallway that will not end, pause before the next door. Do not reach only for escape. Ask, what threshold am I afraid to cross? What truth repeats until I face it? The corridor is not punishing you, it is guiding you. The footsteps behind are not just threat, They are reminder. You cannot run forever. The question is not whether the hallway ends. The question is whether you will. Almost every dreamer who has ever run in sleep knows this peculiar torment. The body refuses to cooperate. Your legs feel heavy, as though shackled by invisible chains. You pump your arms, you command your muscles, you beg for speed, but each step is thick as mud. The pursuer gains. The footsteps echo louder. No matter how urgently you try, your body betrays you. This is one of the most universal details of the chase dream: paralysis within motion. Why does the unconscious choose this? Cruelty? Why does it strip us of the very ability most necessary to survive? Perhaps the dream is not about failure at all, but about revelation. Heavy legs show you the futility of flight. They remind you that running is not always the solution. In waking life, the sensation has roots in biology. During REM sleep, the brain induces muscle atonia, a state of near paralysis that prevents you from acting out dreams. This safety mechanism, essential for rest, becomes twisted when inserted into a nightmare. The brain commands running, but the body cannot respond. The result is the sickening drag of leaden legs, the desperate motion that yields no progress. You are trapped in the collision between intention and impossibility. But beyond the science lies symbolism. Heavy legs speak of burden. What weights do you carry into sleep? Guilt? Regret? Responsibilities that pile higher than your strength. In the dream, they do not vanish. They cling to your muscles, slowing each step. The unconscious turns psychological weight into physical resistance. You wake with relief, yet part of you knows the heaviness was never about legs. It was about life. Consider how the environment in such dreams conspires to worsen the struggle. The ground grows sticky, pulling at your shoes. Pavement tilts upward, transforming into hill after hill. Air itself feels dense, as though you are running underwater. Every element agrees. Escape will not come easily. The dream is less about pursuit and more about struggle. It wants you to feel how exhaustion magnifies fear. There is a mythic dimension here as well. Many cultures speak of journeys where heroes attempt to flee but find themselves slowed. In Greek myth, dreams of running in mud were believed to signify unconfessed guilt. In Norse sagas, warriors described nightmares of legs turning heavy before battle, warnings of doubt gnawing at their courage. In West African traditions, being slowed in a dream was interpreted as ancestral spirits pulling the dreamer back, insisting on acknowledgement before release. Across centuries, heavy legs have been read as the language of weight, not physical weight, but spiritual, emotional, ancestral. The terror is not only in slowness, it is in contrast. You know what it feels like to run. You know the wind in your face, the surge of muscle, the rhythm of speed. The dream steals that memory and replaces it with betrayal. Your own body becomes the enemy. You are not only hunted, you are hindered by yourself. The pursuer needs no speed. Your failure delivers you into their grasp. And yet, what if this paralysis carries wisdom? Heavy legs remind you that escape is not always the answer. The more you resist, the heavier they become. Perhaps the unconscious is forcing you to consider another option. Not running, but turning. The weight may be an invitation to stop, to face what follows, to surrender, not to defeat, but to recognition. After all, many dreamers report that when they stop struggling, when they accept the heaviness, something shifts. The pursuer fades, or the dream dissolves, or the fear transforms into dialogue instead of chase. There is also the possibility that heavy legs symbolize exhaustion itself, the state of living always in flight, always pursued by deadlines, expectations, anxieties. Day after day, you run mentally, emotionally. By night, your body stages the truth. You cannot run forever. It shows you the drag of fatigue in exaggerated form. It begs you to slow down, to rest, to acknowledge limits you deny. Imagine the sensory detail. Each step lands with a thud that reverberates in your bones. The ground grips like tar. Your calves scream with effort, but the distance does not shorten. You glance back, and the pursuer walks calmly, unhurried, because they do not need to run. They know you will fail. The hallway stretches longer. The forest grows denser. Your lungs burn. The dream teaches through torment. The fear is not only behind you, it is within you. What lesson waits here? Perhaps that heaviness is honesty. It shows you the truth you ignore by day, that you are burdened, tired, holding more than you admit. Perhaps it is not failure, but invitation to release, to face, to stop pretending you can outrun what weighs you down. So tonight, if your legs betray you in dreams, do not think of it only as cruelty. Ask what burden the weight represents. Ask why the dream insists you slow. And when the footsteps grow loud, consider the possibility that the weight is not a trap, but a teacher. The pursuer may not want to catch you. It may want you to stop running. Sometimes in chase dreams, the terror is not only the figure behind you, it is the world itself. The hallway collapses. The street bends upward like the spine of some impossible creature. Doors slam before you arrive. Forest branches knot into cages. The ground tilts, turns slick, or vanishes beneath your feet. You are no longer hunted only by a pursuer. You are hunted by reality. The dream itself becomes the enemy. This cruelty has its roots in a simple truth. Fear reshapes perception. When you are terrified, the world feels hostile. Sounds sharpen, shadows lengthen, paths seem to conspire against you. In waking life, this is adrenaline at work. In dreams, the effect is amplified. The unconscious does not settle for implication. It makes the hostility literal. The very air thickens. The very walls lean inward. The very ground betrays. Consider how often the environment in such dreams behaves like a collaborator with the pursuer. Corridors stretch infinitely, delaying escape. Stairs rise into impossible spirals. Roads crumble into pits. Even light conspires, flickering out at the precise moment you most need to see. You do not flee through neutral space, you flee through resistance. The dream ensures that every element agrees. You cannot outrun what follows. Why does the mind design such hostility? Perhaps because terror is not only about being pursued. Terror is about isolation, about feeling that the universe itself has turned against you. To be hunted by one figure is dreadful, but to be hunted by the entire world is despair. The dream forces you to inhabit that despair fully, to know what it is to feel that nothing will help you, nothing will open, nothing will bend in your favor. There is psychological resonance here. Many people live seasons of life where everything feels against them. Relationships fracture, work becomes impossible, health declines, each door closes, each path repeats. The chase dream translates this sensation into architecture. The world is not neutral, it conspires. The pursuer is only half the story. The other half is the landscape itself, transformed into a trap. Myth and folklore again echo this. In Dante's Inferno, sinners run through mazes that shift, forests that strangle, rivers that burn. In Hindu myths, wrongdoers flee across endless deserts that swallow their feet. In Native American tales, trickster spirits rearrange paths so that escape becomes impossible. Across cultures, nightmares of hostile landscapes teach the same lesson. You cannot rely on the world to protect you from what you refuse to face. But the hostility may hold another meaning. Perhaps the collapsing hallways and tilting streets symbolize inner resistance. What part of you sabotages your own escape? What part of you slams the door before you reach it? Self-sabotage is often unconscious, but in dreams it becomes visible. The world turning against you may not be the world at all. It may be you. Imagine the sensory immersion. You sprint down a corridor, breath tearing at your lungs. A door appears ahead, salvation glowing faintly. You reach for the handle, only to find it welded shut. You turn another way. The floor tilts, sending you stumbling. Lights burst overhead, showering sparks. Behind you, footsteps steady, patient, unbothered. You understand then, you are not running through space. You are running through refusal. The world collapses because you collapse. The resistance is your own. From a neuroscientific angle, dreams of hostile environments may reflect the brain's default mode. Network misfiring under stress. Instead of generating neutral landscapes, it projects threat into every surface. The mind believes the danger is omnipresent, so the dream mirrors that belief. What you feel internally is written onto walls and floors. The chase becomes not just external pursuit, but internal collapse. What wisdom hides here? If the world turns against you in dreams, perhaps it is reminding you that escape cannot be external. If every path betrays, perhaps the solution is not to run, but to turn inward. Hostile landscapes remind us that the enemy is not only behind, the enemy may be within, the part of us that refuses release, that sabotages progress, that insists on collapse whenever freedom nears. The most profound variation of this dream is when the pursuer is no longer needed at all. You run anyway, doors slam, floors vanish, the world itself becomes the hunter. At that point, the figure behind you dissolves. The truth stands bare. You are chased not by someone, but by everything. You wake trembling, heart hammering, certain that the very air in your room was complicit. This despair lingers into the day. You walk your own hallways and feel them longer. You step onto streets and half expect the ground to tilt. The memory of betrayal colors waking life. Yet hidden inside is the lesson. If the world in your dream resists you, it is because you resist yourself. The path will not clear until you face what you are running from. So tonight, if the doors slam, if the corridors stretch, if the very ground falls away beneath your steps, pause in the terror. Ask, is this world my enemy or my reflection? Perhaps the landscape turns hostile only because I refuse to stop running. The question is not why the world betrays you. The question is, what within you demands betrayal? Every chase dream carries the same question. What happens if you are caught? Most of the time, the dream spares you the answer. You wake just before capture, heart racing, sheets tangled, lungs aching as though you had truly run. The story ends. On the edge of consequence, the curtain pulled before revelation. But sometimes the dream does not spare you. Sometimes the footsteps close the distance. The shadow overtakes you. The hand touches your shoulder. And then, in that suspended instant, you face the moment of capture. For some, the experience is violent. The pursuer drags them down, teeth flashing, blows landing, pain vivid enough to wake them in panic. For others, the capture is strangely quiet. A hand rests on the arm. A shadow enfolds them. No harm comes, but fear swells all the same, because the unknown becomes known, and the known is not what they expected. Why does the mind stage this moment? Why give the hunter victory? Perhaps because avoidance can only last so long. The unconscious does not allow endless escape. At some point, it insists, you must confront what follows you. To be caught is to be forced into recognition. Psychologists note that in many capture dreams, the violence is less physical than symbolic. The pursuer may pin you, but the real terror is helplessness. You cannot move. You cannot speak. You cannot resist. This paralysis echoes the truth of fear itself. It is not only about danger, but about powerlessness. The pursuer wins because you have given away the possibility of choice. There are dreamers, however, who report capture as revelation. They turn, the pursuer reaches, and instead of claws or fists, the figure simply stares. Sometimes it dissolves into mist. Sometimes it transforms into someone familiar. Sometimes it is themselves. In these moments, terror collapses into recognition. The chase was never about being harmed. It was about being found. Think of how often the dream ends at this threshold. You wake the instant the hand touches you. Your body jerks as though pulled by strings. This is the hypnic jerk, a reflex of muscles jolting awake. But on a deeper level, it is your mind refusing to finish the story. Perhaps it believes you are not ready for what capture means. Perhaps it leaves you suspended, forcing you to carry the unanswered question into waking life. In mythology, capture often marks transformation. In Greek tales, those who were seized by gods or spirits were never the same again, changed, enlightened, cursed. In shamanic traditions, being caught in visions often meant initiation, the beginning of a new role. To be captured is to surrender, identity as it was, to allow change to seize you. In this way, the dream of capture may not be punishment. It may be initiation, but capture also terrifies because it removes control. When you are caught, you no longer choose direction. You no longer set the pace. Someone else does. And perhaps that is why we dread it most. Not the harm, but the loss of freedom. The dream magnifies this fear, making you feel every ounce of powerlessness that comes with surrender. Consider the sensory detail. The footsteps grow louder, closer, until they match your heartbeat. Breath brushes the back of your neck. You stumble. The hand grips your arm. The world freezes, color draining into grayscale. Sound muffles. You turn, and the pursuer's face is inches from yours. Maybe it is monstrous. Maybe it is familiar. Maybe it is your own reflection, twisted and weary. Whatever it is, you cannot flee. You must see. There are dreamers who choose, even within sleep, to surrender. They stop running, turn, and wait. When capture comes, it is not violence but embrace. The pursuer becomes guide, pointing toward doors they never noticed, paths they never took. Fear melts into dialogue. In these dreams, capture is not end but beginning. The hunter was never enemy but unacknowledged truth. What then is the lesson of capture? That running cannot last forever, that avoidance has limits, that at some point the thing behind you must be faced, whether it harms or heals. To be caught is to be forced into honesty. The dream says, you cannot flee what belongs to you, and perhaps this is the paradox. Capture can liberate. When you stop running, when you surrender, the chase ends. The footsteps vanish. The corridor dissolves. You wake not in terror, but in relief. Heart slow, breath steady. The pursuer caught you, but what they seized was not your life. It was your denial. So tonight, if the dream closes distance, if the hand falls on your shoulder, if the pursuer wins, remember, this is not defeat. It is confrontation. It is the unconscious demanding honesty. The terror is sharp, but beneath it waits the possibility of transformation. The question is not what happens when you are caught. The question is, what truth catches up to you? No dream of pursuit ends cleanly. Even when you wake, the chase lingers. Your heart still drums, your breath stutters, your muscles ache as if you had truly sprinted. You lie in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, listening for footsteps that no longer exist. And though you know the dream is over, something remains. It is not the pursuer that follows you into the day. It is the echo. The echo takes many forms. For some, it is physical. A pounding chest, a film of sweat, a jitter in the hands. For others, it is emotional, a sense of unease, of unfinished business, of something unresolved tugging at the edges of thought. For still others, the echo is spiritual, the haunting conviction that the dream was not random at all, that it carried a message too important to ignore. Why does the chase linger so deeply? Part of the answer is biological. During REM sleep, the amygdala, the brain's center for fear, fires as intensely as it does during waking threat. Your body reacts as though danger were real, flooding you with adrenaline, tightening your muscles, sharpening your senses. When you wake, the chemicals remain. The body cannot tell the difference between dream danger and real danger. The echo is the residue of survival. But there is more. The echo persists because the unconscious refuses closure. If the dream allowed you to escape fully, you might dismiss it. If the dream allowed you to resolve the pursuit, you might forget. But the echo is unfinishedness. It demands attention. You carry it because the story is not over. The footsteps may have stopped, but the meaning has not. Think of how the day after such a dream feels. Hallways at work seem longer, shadows on, the sidewalk feel thicker. Every sudden sound behind you quickens your heart. Even laughter feels slightly distant, as though you are not entirely present. This is the echo working, not only in memory, but in perception. The dream colors waking reality, reminding you that the unconscious does not stay locked in sleep. It spills. Psychologists suggest that chase dreams are the mind's rehearsal for danger. They sharpen reflexes, prepare responses, keep the body ready. But the echo may serve a different purpose. It is not rehearsal. It is reminder. Reminder that something in you remains unresolved. Something follows you still, not only in the dream, but in waking life. The echo is not about survival of body. It is about survival of truth. Cultures across the world speak of dreams that linger as omens. Ancient Egyptians believed that dreams carried through the day were messages from gods. Indigenous traditions often treat powerful dreams as guides, meant to be honored, spoken aloud, integrated. In medieval Europe, dreams that refused to fade were considered warnings, soul messages demanding obedience. The echo, in all these beliefs, is a sign that the dream must not be dismissed. There is tenderness in this persistence. The unconscious does not want you to forget. It does not chase you only at night. It nudges you through the day. The echo is softer than footsteps, but no less insistent. You feel it in the unease that accompanies quiet moments, in the way your mind drifts back to the dream without invitation. It is the shadow tapping your shoulder in daylight, asking again, "Will you listen?" Consider the sensory detail of the echo. You wake, heart hammering, and the silence of the room feels thick. The air carries the memory of pursuit. Each creak of the house mimics a step. Each rustle of leaves outside the window feels like approach. You know you are safe, but safety does not erase the resonance. The dream has carved rhythm into your nerves. You carry the beat long after the music stops. For some, the echo inspires change. A dream of pursuit lingers until they admit what they are running from. They confront the conflict, the grief, the decision. In these cases, the echo becomes guide, pressing them toward honesty. For others, the echo becomes weight, dragging at the day, coloring every moment with dread. The difference lies not in the dream, but in the response. The echo offers invitation. You choose whether to accept. There is also the echo of absence. Sometimes the most haunting detail is not the footsteps, but their silence. You wake and realize that what terrifies you is not being followed, but being alone. The echo, in this case, is emptiness. The dream reminds you of what is missing, not what is present. Loneliness has its own rhythm, and sometimes it is louder than pursuit. In film, echoes are used to sustain tension. Footsteps lingering after the figure vanishes, voices repeating after dialogue ends. Dreams employ the same technique. The pursuer may vanish, but the sound remains. The fear may dissolve, but the unease lingers. The story continues even after you wake, carried not by vision, but by sensation. What wisdom waits in the echo? Perhaps that you cannot dismiss what pursues you by waking. Perhaps that the mind carries its truths into every realm, refusing to separate night from day. Perhaps that pursuit is not about monsters at all, but about memory, honesty, wholeness. The echo follows because the truth does. So tomorrow, when you walk through your own corridors, when you step down your own streets, listen carefully. The footsteps may not sound, the shadow may not appear, but if unease lingers, if silence feels heavy, If your heart beats faster without cause, remember, the dream has not left. It walks with you, softly, patiently, waiting. The question is not whether the echo will fade. The question is whether you will answer it. For many, the chase dream is not a one-time terror. It comes again and again, repeating across years, sometimes decades. The setting may change: a school hallway one night, a city street the next, a forest path in another. But the structure is the same. You run, something follows. Escape never comes. This repetition unsettles even the calmest dreamers. Why, they ask, does the same story return? Why does the mind insist on staging the same nightmare again and again? Repetition in dreams is never accidental. The unconscious does not waste energy. When a story repeats, it is because something remains unresolved. The chase dream is persistence embodied. If you refuse to face what hunts you, the dream will come back, each night painting, the pursuit in new colors but never changing the script. It waits for you to answer. Until then, it will not let go. Psychologists describe these dreams as recurring symbols of conflict. The pursuer is the embodiment of what you avoid: stress, grief, guilt, memory. When ignored, avoidance grows stronger. It demands recognition. Like a teacher repeating a lesson, the unconscious replays the dream until you learn. Each return is insistence. Each return is a reminder. There is biology, too. Stress and trauma create loops in the brain. The hippocampus replays them, hoping to integrate what remains unresolved. Night after night, the memory is rehearsed in different costumes, different settings. The pursuer may change, the environment may shift, but the rhythm is identical. The dream is not random horror. It is therapy conducted in darkness. Consider how the settings evolve in repeated dreams. Early versions may be simple: an open field, a faceless pursuer. Later versions may add detail: hallways, doors, crowds that do not help. Sometimes the pursuer gains clarity, sometimes it remains blurred. Each variation is not failure, but progression. The unconscious experiments, offering new symbols, waiting to see which one you will finally recognize. History tells us that recurring dreams were often treated as messages. In ancient Mesopotamia, priests kept clay tablets where citizens recorded repeated dreams. These were considered the most urgent, direct communications from the divine. In indigenous traditions, recurring dreams are honored as guides. They are not dismissed as coincidence, but treated as sacred instruction. Repetition is the language of insistence. What is repeated is what must be heard. The repetition itself creates fear. To dream once of being chased is terrifying. To dream it every month, every week, every night is to feel haunted not by a figure, but by inevitability. It convinces you that the dream has power, that it knows you, that it will not stop. And perhaps it does not stop because you have not stopped. Running in sleep mirrors, running in life. The repetition is your own refusal reflected back. Think of the sensory detail of repetition. You know the corridor, you know the bend in the road, you know the branch that will catch your arm, the stair that will collapse, the shadow that will lengthen. Anticipation sharpens fear. You dread not only the pursuit, but the knowledge that it will come again. The dream has become ritual, and rituals hold power. Some dreamers report that when they finally turn in the recurring chase, the dream shifts permanently. The pursuer may vanish, the corridor may end, the nightmare may never return. It is as though the unconscious, satisfied, at last, lays down its script. The lesson was not in the running, but in the confrontation. Until you face what follows, the play repeats. When you face it, the stage is dismantled. But not all dreamers choose confrontation. For many, the repetition continues for years. They live with the echo of footsteps as a constant companion. These people often describe waking life as shadowed by the dream, as though the pursuit runs parallel to their days. Work, relationships, choices, everything carries the background rhythm of repetition. They are chased not only at night, but in thought. The unconscious refuses to release them until they release themselves. There is tenderness here too. Repetition is not cruelty. It is care. The unconscious does not want you to forget. It does not allow you to bury what matters. It brings it back again and again until you see. Like a friend who will not let you ignore the truth, it insists. It loves you enough to repeat. So what does it mean then, that the same chase comes again? It means the story is not finished. It means you have not turned. It means you are still running. The repetition is not punishment. It is opportunity, returned night after night until you are ready. Tonight, if you find yourself once more in the same hallway, the same forest, the same endless street, pause before despair. Remember, repetition is invitation. The question is not why the dream returns. The question is whether you will finally answer. There is a strange shift that can happen in recurring chase dreams. At first, you are terrified, desperate to escape, but over time, something changes. The fear does not vanish, but it becomes familiar. The footsteps no longer shock. They are expected. The corridors no longer confuse. They are known. The chase itself becomes routine. You wake shaken, but less than before. You fall asleep almost anticipating the pursuit. The nightmare has become habit. This is one of the most unsettling truths of the unconscious. Even fear can grow comfortable. When repeated enough, the body adjusts, the mind adapts. What once jolted you awake now rocks you into familiarity. You may not like the dream, but part of you has accepted it as normal. You are chased not only by a shadow, but by repetition itself. Why does this happen? One explanation lies in psychology. When unresolved conflict persists, the mind integrates it into daily rhythm. Avoidance becomes lifestyle. Running becomes identity. In waking life, you may avoid confrontation so often that it becomes second nature. At night, the dream mirrors this habit. You run not because you choose to, but because running is what you do. The chase is no longer emergency, it is routine. Think of how habits form. At first, they demand effort. Later, they become automatic. Fear, too, can become automatic. You do not question why the footsteps return. You do not wonder why the corridor repeats. You accept it as the natural order of night. And in that acceptance lies danger, for the dream no longer pushes you toward irresolution. It lulls you into endurance. You wake thinking, this is simply how it is. Cultures have long warned about becoming too familiar with terror. In medieval folklore, victims of nightly hauntings were told never to befriend the ghost, lest its presence grow permanent. In psychological terms, this is the danger of trauma that is never confronted. It weaves itself into the fabric of identity. You stop asking when it will end. You begin asking only how to live with it. There is biology too. Repeated dreams train the nervous system to expect pursuit. The amygdala fires predictably. The heart pounds in rhythm. The body rehearses flight again and again until it becomes conditioned. This conditioning may explain why some dreamers say they no longer fear the chase as deeply. They have learned to survive it. But surviving is not resolving. The hunter still follows. The habit still binds. Imagine the sensory texture of such dreams. You run, but without panic. Your legs drag, but without shock. The footsteps follow, but you do not scream. You are tired, resigned, practiced. You turn the corner and already know which doors will be locked, which stairs will collapse. The dream has become script, and you, its weary actor. The pursuer is less terrifying than the knowledge that you will perform this scene again tomorrow night. And yet, there is wisdom even in habit. Perhaps the unconscious repeats until you stop treating fear as routine. Perhaps the lesson is not only about the pursuer, but about your relationship with fear itself. Are you willing to let dread become part of identity? Are you willing to call it normal? Or will you decide that even familiar fear deserves to be confronted? Think of how waking life mirrors this. How many people live in cycles of stress, worry, exhaustion, always pursued but never turning? How many accept the footsteps of debt, of responsibility, of grief as normal background music to their lives? Habit dulls pain, but it also dulls possibility. If the chase becomes habit, freedom feels impossible. The dream warns, what you accept without question will become permanent. Myth echoes this too. In Greek tragedy, characters repeat their mistakes until repetition itself becomes curse. In Buddhist teaching, samsara is the endless cycle of suffering, repeated life after life until one awakens. In each case, habit is prison. The chase that becomes habit is no different. It is samsara in miniature, an endless loop of pursuit, waiting for awakening. So what is the invitation here? To recognize the moment when fear feels familiar. To notice when you stop asking why the dream returns. To realize that comfort with terror is not peace, it is surrender. The unconscious is not punishing you, it is showing you what happens when avoidance becomes routine. Tonight, if the footsteps feel expected, if the corridors feel known, if the chase feels habitual, pause inside the dream. Ask yourself, am I running because I must, or because I always do? The habit itself may be the enemy. The pursuer may be less frightening than your own acceptance of endless pursuit. The question is not whether the dream repeats. The question is whether you will let repetition become identity. From the first echo of footsteps to the last corridor without end, the chase dream has carried us through shadows, fears, burdens, and revelations. We have run from faceless hunters and familiar faces, from collapsing worlds, and from ourselves. We have stumbled on heavy legs, felt the betrayal of hostile landscapes, endured repetition until it became routine. Always, the question returns. What does it mean? Why does the mind choose pursuit as its story of fear? At its heart, the chase dream is about avoidance. The pursuer is rarely an external monster. It is the shape of what you refuse to face. Grief, guilt, anger, change, responsibility, truth. You may ignore these by day, distracting yourself with tasks and noise. But at night, when distraction falls away, the unconscious writes the truth into motion. What you flee in waking life takes legs in sleep. Psychologists explain this as threat rehearsal. The mind uses dreams to prepare for danger, to sharpen reflexes, to train survival. But the chase dream carries deeper symbolism than survival alone. It is not practice for predators or enemies. It is practice for honesty. Each step behind you is unfinished business. Each corridor is unresolved choice. Each pursuer is a mask for what you already know but refuse to name. Think of how many forms the chase can take. Faceless shadows represent pure fear, fear of the unknown, fear of possibility. Familiar faces represent conflict, love twisted with anger, respect mixed with resentment, self turned into enemy. Heavy legs symbolize burden, the weight of responsibility, the drag of exhaustion. Hostile landscapes reflect sabotage, when you, not the world, close the doors before yourself. Repetition shows insistence. The truth will return until acknowledged. Every variation is a different mask, but the body beneath is always the same. The chase is unfinishedness. The chase is denial. And yet the chase dream is not only punishment, it is invitation. It says, you cannot outrun forever. You cannot make silence permanent. You cannot bury truth deep enough that footsteps will not find it. The dream insists because the unconscious insists on wholeness. The pursuit is not enemy, but messenger, urging you to stop, to turn, to face. Cultures across the world have long seen dreams of pursuit as messages of transformation. In shamanic visions, being hunted often preceded initiation. The dreamer forced to confront shadow before becoming healer. In Greek mysteries, Being seized by gods marked the beginning of change. In Buddhist teaching, running endlessly in samsara symbolizes suffering that repeats until awakening. The chase is universal because avoidance is universal. No human escapes the need to face themselves. Imagine the dream one final time. You run. Footsteps follow. The corridor stretches, the forest bends, the world conspires. Your legs grow heavy, your breath burns, your heart stammers. You know the pursuer gains. You feel the hand about to touch. In that suspended instant, you have a choice. Continue running, and the dream will repeat. Stop, and the story may shift. The pursuer may harm, or reveal, or dissolve, or embrace, but either way, you will know. And knowledge is freedom, even when it terrifies. The meaning of the chase is not about capture or escape. It is about recognition. Recognition of what you flee, what you bury, what you refuse. The footsteps will continue until you turn. The dream is not cruel. It is patient. It will come again and again, not because it hates you, but because it wants you to live whole. So tonight, if you hear footsteps in your sleep, if corridors lengthen, if legs grow heavy, if doors slam shut, pause. Ask not who chases you, but what. Ask not why you run, but from whom. The answer may not be easy, but it will be true. And if you have listened to this story through its end, I want to thank you. Thank you for allowing me to walk with you through shadows and echoes, through corridors and fears. These journeys only matter because you are here to hear them. Your time, your presence, your quiet listening is the reason these stories can exist. If you have found meaning, or comfort, or simply curiosity in this exploration, I invite you gently. Consider supporting this series. A like, a subscribe, a small gesture of connection. It may seem simple, but it is a great encouragement, a reminder that these calm explorations matter, and to those who already do, thank you deeply. You are the reason these whispers continue in the noisy universe. May your night ahead be peaceful. May your dreams carry not only footsteps but also answers. And if you must run, may you find the courage to one day turn. Long before psychology named them, before neuroscience traced them to the REM cycle, before modern dream journals filled with analysis, human beings were already haunted by chase dreams. Across civilizations, across centuries, across continents, people dreamed of running. They dreamed of footsteps following, of hunters at their heels, of corridors with no end. And everywhere, they asked the same question we ask today: why do I dream of being chased? The universality of the chase dream reveals something profound. It is not only personal, it is cultural. It is stitched into myth, ritual, folklore. To understand its depth, we must wander backward through time, listening to how ancient peoples interpreted the terror of pursuit. In ancient Egypt, dreams were believed to be windows between worlds. The Book of Dreams, inscribed on papyrus more than 3,000 years ago, catalogued visions and their meanings. To be chased was considered a warning. The gods, or perhaps spirits of the dead, urged the dreamer to face hidden guilt. The pursuit was not arbitrary, it was divine message. The footsteps belonged not to an enemy, but to judgment itself. Temples employed dream interpreters who whispered to the anxious, "Do not ignore the hunter, for it carries truth from the gods." In Mesopotamia, clay tablets reveal similar fears. To be hunted in dreams was seen as the arrival of demons, pressing close to test a person's strength. The dreamer was instructed to make offerings, to burn incense, to cleanse themselves, so that the unseen hunter would release its grip. For them, pursuit was spiritual danger. Running in sleep meant running from powers larger than life. The Greeks wove pursuit into myth. Think of Orestes, hounded by the Furies for killing his mother's murderer. The footsteps of the Furies were the footsteps of guilt, echoing endlessly until he found resolution. Or consider Pan, god of the wild, whose sudden appearance sent mortals running in panic, a word born from his name. For the Greeks, pursuit was morality made flesh. To be chased in vision was to be reminded that deeds, once done, could not be outrun. In medieval Europe, dreams of being hunted were interpreted as omens of sin. Priests taught that the pursuer was the devil himself, chasing the sinner through the corridors of conscience. Manuals of dream interpretation advised confession, prayer, fasting, anything to turn and face the shadow before it grew too powerful. Here the chase was not random terror. It was a warning of the soul's peril. Among indigenous peoples, interpretations were often more nuanced. In many traditions, to be chased in dreams meant that a spirit guide was trying to reach you. The hunter was not an enemy but a teacher, pursuing until you stopped to listen. In these cultures, turning toward the pursuer was essential. Avoidance delayed wisdom. The dream pressed you into transformation. Even in folklore, the chase persisted. The Norse told of the wild hunt, a spectral procession of riders storming the sky, hooves pounding, chasing souls of the unready. To hear their steps was omen of death. In African stories, trickster spirits followed softly, testing courage. In Asian tales, fox spirits chased dreamers to reveal hidden truths. Across the world, footsteps in dreams always meant more than simple fear. They were the language of destiny, of spirits, of truth pressing closer. Why did so many cultures agree on the meaning of pursuit? Because the experience itself is undeniable. Every human knows the feeling of being hunted, by predator, by enemy, by guilt, by conscience. To run is to live. To be chased is to know vulnerability. The unconscious simply translated this universal truth into symbol, and cultures in turn interpreted the symbol through their own beliefs. Imagine the sensory immersion in these ancient visions. An Egyptian lying on a reed mat, waking breathless from pursuit, rushing to a priest to decode the steps. A Greek whispering of dreams to an oracle, fearing the judgment of gods. A medieval villager kneeling in candlelight, confessing to a priest after dreaming of devilish hunters. A shaman sitting by a fire, listening as a dreamer describes being chased, nodding and saying, "You must stop running, you must face the spirit." Though centuries apart, they share the same rhythm. Footsteps in the night, fear at the back, awakening with echo. The ancient roots of the chase remind us that we are not alone in this dream. Every generation has run, every culture has listened for the steps. The meaning has shifted, guilt, sin, spirit, guidance, but the core has never changed. Something follows, something insists, something will not release until acknowledged. What does this tell us now? That our chase dreams are not trivial. They are not random. They are part of humanity's oldest story. They link us to ancestors who also woke breathless, who also wondered, who also feared. The footsteps in your dream are the same footsteps they heard. The corridor you run is the same corridor they described. To dream of being chased is to join a lineage as old as memory. So tonight, if the footsteps return, pause and remember. You are not the first. You are not alone. You run a path carved by centuries of dreamers. You flee through a story humanity has always told. And the question remains, as it always has, will you keep running or will you turn? The chase has carried us through every corridor, every forest, every hallway of shadow. We have stumbled with heavy legs, turned corners that bent back on themselves, felt the breath of pursuers, both faceless and familiar. We have run from collapsing worlds, hostile landscapes, echoes that linger even in daylight. And now, at the end of this long pursuit, we ask, what lies beyond the dream? The answer is not in the footsteps, nor in the corridors, nor in the hunter. It is in the runner. Always, the story has been about you. The dream pursues because you flee. It echoes because you ignore. It repeats because you resist. When you stop, when you turn, When you face what follows, the story changes. The nightmare dissolves into dialogue. The terror becomes transformation. Psychologists tell us that chased dreams embody avoidance. Neuroscientists explain them as threat, rehearsals. Myths show us the pursuit as divine judgment or spiritual initiation. Cultures across centuries have told us, to be chased is to be called. Every perspective leads to the same truth, that what hunts you is not random, it is revelation. Consider how often life mirrors the dream. We run from grief, burying it beneath routine. We run from guilt, hiding it behind excuses. We run from change, clinging to comfort. We run from truth, drowning it in noise. But the footsteps always return. No matter the disguise, no matter the delay, the sound persists. The dream simply makes visible what waking life conceals. The deeper meaning of the chase is not fear but honesty. It is the unconscious saying, what you avoid must be faced. The pursuer is not your enemy. It is your own truth, patient and insistent. It will chase you until you turn, not to punish, but to complete. Imagine this moment. You run one final time. Footsteps follow, steady, inevitable. The corridor stretches, the forest bends, the doors slam. Your lungs burn, your legs drag. And then, in exhaustion, you stop. You turn. The pursuer halts too, inches away. Its face may be shadow or stranger or your own. In that instant, terror loosens, because you see, and in seeing, you are free. The dream has never been about escape. It has always been about confrontation. Beyond the dream lies not endless running, but the courage to face what you fear. Beyond the dream lies peace. Not because the hunter vanishes, but because you no longer flee. And so, as we close this long journey together, I want to thank you. Truly. Thank you for running these corridors with me, for listening to footsteps that may mirror your own, for giving time to this quiet exploration in a noisy world. Without you, these stories would be shadows. With you, they are shared light. If this series has spoken to you, if it has sparked reflection, or eased fear, or simply accompanied you through a restless night, I gently invite you to support it. A like, a subscribe, a small gesture may seem simple, but it is a great encouragement. It is the reason these calm explorations can continue. And to those of you who already support, thank you deeply. Your presence is the heartbeat that carries these stories forward. So tonight, may your dreams be gentler. May the footsteps fade into silence. And if they return, may you find the courage to turn. Because beyond the dream, beyond the chase, beyond the fear, there waits only you.